The auction yard woke early that morning. The sun rose slowly over the wooden fences and dusty ground. People arrived in trucks and trailers, their voices filling the air with talk of prices and chances. Horses stood in long lines, tied or fenced in, waiting for strangers to judge their worth in seconds. Some horses looked proud and strong. Some looked nervous. Others had already given up hope. At the far corner of the yard stood a gray mare. She was quiet, almost invisible, even though her size and shape were strong. Her coat was dull, marked by time and hard days. Her ribs showed faintly, not from hunger alone but from long stress. A small board hung near her stall with rough words written on it. Unfixable. No rider. No return. People passed her without stopping. A few glanced at her legs and neck and shook their heads. Some laughed softly and moved on. Others whispered that she was trouble and not worth the effort. The mare did not move much. She stood with her head low, ears turned back slightly, watching the ground instead of the people. She had learned not to expect kindness. When the auction began, voices rose and fell like waves. One horse after another was sold. Strong bids. Fast hands. Quick decisions. The crowd reacted with excitement and disappointment again and again. When it was the gray mare's turn, the sound changed. The auctioneer spoke her number, but his voice lacked energy. He listed her with few words and no praise. The opening price was low. The kind of price meant to clear space, not invite hope. No one raised a hand. The mare lifted her head just a little. Her dark eyes moved across the crowd. They were not empty eyes. They were careful eyes. Eyes that had learned to read danger. A man near the front muttered that she was broken. Another said she would never be useful. Someone else laughed and turned away. Near the fence stood a cowboy named Tom. Tom had not planned to buy a horse that day. He came only to look. His ranch was small. His money was limited. His days were long. He knew better than to make fast choices. But something kept pulling his attention back to the gray mare. He watched how she stood. She did not pull at the rope or strike the ground. She did not cry out. She stayed still, as if stillness was safer than hope. When people came close, she turned her head away but did not fight. Tom noticed the difference. He had worked with many horses. He knew fear. He knew anger. He knew pain. What he saw in her was not rage. It was caution, deep and learned. The auctioneer called again for bids. Silence answered. Tom felt something heavy in his chest. He remembered other moments like this. Moments when people walked away because something seemed too hard. Moments when giving up felt easier than trying. The mare shifted her weight. Dust moved under her hooves. She lifted her head higher now and looked directly toward the fence where Tom stood. Their eyes met. It was not a long moment, but it was enough. Her eyes held a quiet question. Not trust. Not fear alone. Something in between. A waiting. Tom raised his hand. A few heads turned in surprise. Someone whispered. Someone else shook their head. No one challenged the bid. The gavel fell. The sound echoed louder than expected. Sold. The crowd moved on almost immediately. Another horse was led forward. Another story began. The gray mare's story, as far as most people were concerned, was over. Tom did not move right away. He stayed near the fence, resting his arms on the rail. He did not rush toward her. He knew better. Horses like her needed space before touch. The mare watched him carefully. Her body was tense, but she did not pull back. She waited. Tom spoke softly, his voice low and steady. He did not use commands. He did not make promises. He simply let sound exist between them. The noise of the auction faded into the background. After a while, Tom stepped closer. Slowly. One step at a time. His movements were calm and open. He kept his hands visible. He stopped when the mare shifted and waited until she settled again. This was not his first patient horse. But something about her felt different. He sensed a history that went deeper than poor training. A life where trust had been asked for and then broken. When he reached the fence of her stall, he stopped. He did not enter. He stood quietly and breathed. The mare lowered her head slightly. Not much. Just enough to show she was still watching. Tom nodded, as if she had spoken. The handler came to transfer the papers. He warned Tom that the mare was difficult, that she might never accept a rider, that she might never be safe. Tom listened. He did not argue. Some things could not be explained with words. As the mare was led out of the yard, she hesitated at the gate. The open space beyond looked unfamiliar. The noise behind her faded. She paused, unsure. Tom stepped beside her, not pulling, not pushing. She took one step forward. Then, another. The dust of the auction yard fell behind them as they moved toward the trailer. No one noticed. No one cared. But for the first time in a long while, the gray mare was no longer waiting to be judged. She was moving toward something unknown. Something uncertain. Something different. The drive from the auction yard to the ranch was quiet. The road stretched long and empty, bordered by dry fields and low hills. The trailer moved steadily behind the truck. Inside, the gray mare stood still, listening to every sound, feeling every turn. She had been moved many times before. Each move had brought new fear, new hands, new places that never felt safe. She did not know where she was going now. She only knew she was leaving the noise behind. Tom drove slowly. He did not rush. He wanted the road to feel calm. He checked the mirrors often, not out of worry, but habit. He talked softly to himself, letting his voice fill the space between them. When they reached the ranch, the sun was already leaning low in the sky. The land was quiet. A small house sat near a wide, open pasture. A few trees stood nearby, their shadows long and gentle. Tom parked the truck and stepped out. He did not open the trailer right away. He walked around, letting the mare hear his steps. He paused, then unlocked the door. Light entered the trailer slowly. The mare shifted back at first. Her ears turned, her body tight. She smelled fresh air, grass, and something unfamiliar but not sharp. Tom stood to the side, giving her space. He did not pull the lead. He waited. Minutes passed. Finally, the mare leaned forward. One hoof touched the ground outside. She paused. Her breathing slowed. Then she stepped fully out, her legs stiff but steady. She stood there, frozen. The pasture spread wide in front of her. No fences close. No shouting. No pressure. Only wind and open space. Her head lifted. Her eyes moved slowly across the land. Tom let her stand as long as she needed. When she moved, it was cautious. She walked a few steps, then stopped. She lowered her head and touched the grass with her nose. The smell was new. The feeling under her hooves was soft. She took another step. Then, another. Tom watched quietly. He led her into a small fenced area near the barn. Not to trap her, but to keep things simple. Inside, there was clean water and hay. Nothing more. He removed the lead and stepped back. The mare stayed still for a moment, then moved toward the water. She drank slowly. She ate a little. She did not rush. She did not relax fully. But she stayed. That night, Tom did not try to touch her. He left her alone after checking the fence. He watched from a distance as the sky darkened and stars appeared. The mare stood quietly in the moonlight. The land was silent except for insects and the soft movement of grass. She listened through the night, alert, waiting for something bad to happen. It did not. Morning came with pale light and cool air. Birds called from the trees. The mare stood where she had slept, her body still tense but rested. Tom returned with slow steps. He carried no tools, no rope, no expectations. He stood near the fence and waited. The mare noticed him at once. Her ears turned forward, then sideways. She did not move away. She watched. Tom spoke softly. He did not say her name. She did not have one yet. He spoke like someone talking to the day itself. Minutes passed. He stepped closer to the fence. She shifted but stayed. Over the next days, a pattern formed. Tom came each morning and each evening. Sometimes he stood quietly. Sometimes he sat on the fence. Sometimes he walked slowly inside the pen, keeping distance. He never rushed. The mare watched him learn her. She learned him too. She learned his steps were even. His voice steady. His hands calm. He did not grab. He did not corner. He did not ask for more than she could give. One afternoon, she surprised herself. Tom was standing inside the pen, looking away. He was not watching her. His posture was open, relaxed. The mare took one slow step toward him. Then she stopped. Her heart beat fast. Her muscles tightened. She waited for him to turn and push or grab. He did not. She took another step. When she stood close enough, she lowered her head slightly. Just a little. A test. Tom felt her presence and froze. He did not turn quickly. He did not lift his hands. He stayed still. After a long moment, he turned his head slowly. Their eyes met again. The mare did not pull away. Tom lifted one hand, slow and careful. He stopped before touching her. He waited. She breathed out. That was enough for that day. The next morning, Tom brought a soft brush. He did not reach for her right away. He held it where she could see. He let her smell it. She shifted, then stayed. He brushed the air near her shoulder, not touching. Then he brushed lightly, once. She flinched but did not move away. He stopped. They stood like that, sharing quiet. Each day after, they took small steps. One touch. One pause. One breath. Trust grew slowly, like grass after rain. The mare still startled at sudden sounds. She still slept lightly. But something inside her began to loosen. She was no longer only waiting. She was learning. And Tom knew this was only the beginning. The weeks passed slowly on the ranch. Time moved in quiet ways, marked by sunrise, shadows, and the sound of wind through grass. The gray mare settled into the land little by little, though her body still carried old memories. Each morning, she stood near the fence before Tom arrived, as if she knew his steps by heart now. Her ears lifted when she heard the truck door close. She did not walk away anymore. She watched. Tom kept his routine steady. He believed calm days built strong trust. He never entered the pen without letting her see him first. He never changed his voice. He never hurried. The mare learned that nothing bad followed his presence. One day, Tom brought a rope into the pen. Not a lead rope. Just a simple coil resting in his hand. The mare noticed it at once. Her body stiffened. Her head lifted high. Her breathing grew shallow. Ropes carried memories. Tom saw the change and stopped. He placed the rope on the ground and stepped away from it. He waited. Minutes passed. The mare watched the rope, then Tom, then the rope again. Her legs trembled slightly, but she did not bolt. She stood and faced it. Tom spoke softly, steady and low. The rope stayed where it was. After a long while, Tom left the pen without touching it again. That night, the mare stood near the rope, watching it as the sun set. She did not touch it. But she did not fear it as much as before. The next day, the rope returned. This time closer to Tom. Not closer to her. Each day, the rope came back. Each day, it stayed longer. Each day, nothing bad happened. Slowly, the mare learned the rope did not mean pain here. Trust grew in small pieces. One morning, Tom brushed her neck longer than before. The mare flinched once, then relaxed. Her head lowered slightly. Her eyes softened. Tom smiled quietly. That afternoon, he opened the gate and led her into a larger pasture. The space was wide and open. She hesitated at first, unsure of the change. Then she stepped forward and walked slowly into the grass. She lifted her head and breathed deep. For the first time, she trotted. Not fast. Not wild. Just enough to feel her legs stretch and move freely. Tom watched from the fence, heart full but patient. Days later, he brought a saddle blanket. He placed it over the fence, not on her. He let the wind move it. He let her see it from a distance. The mare circled, watching. She did not panic. She did not approach. Tom waited. By sunset, she stood near the fence again, looking at the blanket without fear. The next day, he held it in his hands and stood still. He let her come closer. She did. He touched her shoulder lightly with the edge of the blanket and removed it right away. He stopped. She breathed out. That was enough. Trust was not built by force. It was built by stopping at the right moment. As days turned into weeks, the mare changed. Her coat grew brighter. Her body filled out. Her steps grew lighter. She still startled at loud sounds, but she recovered faster now. She began to greet Tom with a quiet nudge of her nose against his arm. A small action. A big sign. Tom gave her a name then. He called her Grace. Not because she moved perfectly, but because she tried. One afternoon, a neighbor named Sam stopped by. Sam had heard about the mare. Word traveled fast in quiet places. Sam leaned on the fence and watched Grace move in the pasture. She looks better than I expected, Sam said. Tom nodded. He did not explain. Sam asked if he could step inside the pasture. Tom hesitated, then agreed. But only if Sam stayed still. Sam entered slowly and stood where Tom pointed. Grace noticed him at once. Her head lifted. Her body tensed. Tom stood beside her. He did not touch her. He let her decide. Grace watched Sam for a long time. Then she took a step toward Tom, staying close. She did not approach Sam. But she did not flee. Sam smiled. She trusts you, he said. Tom nodded again. That evening, Tom tried something new. He placed the saddle blanket gently on Grace's back. He kept his hand there for only a moment, then removed it. Grace stood still. Tom exhaled slowly. Over the next days, the blanket stayed longer. Then a light saddle followed. No weight. No pressure. Just presence. Grace adjusted. She shifted. She learned. Tom never climbed on her. He never rushed the moment. He knew rushing would break what they had built. One night, a storm came. Thunder rolled across the sky. Wind shook the barn. Rain struck the roof hard. Grace panicked. She ran the fence line, eyes wide, breath fast. Old fear returned strong. Tom heard her and came out into the rain. He stood at the gate and called softly. Grace stopped. She stood shaking, rain darkening her coat. Tom did not move closer. He waited. Grace took one step toward him. Then, another. She stopped just short of the gate and stood there as the storm passed around them. Tom stood with her through it, silent and steady. When the storm faded, something inside Grace settled deeper than before. She was not alone anymore. And Tom knew the hardest test was still ahead. But now, they would face it together. The storm left the land quiet the next morning. The air smelled clean, and the ground felt soft underfoot. Grace stood near the fence, her coat damp but her eyes calm. She had not forgotten the fear of the night before, but she had learned something new from it. Tom arrived early. He walked toward the pasture slowly, letting Grace see him from far away. She lifted her head and watched. When he stopped near the gate, she walked toward him on her own. Tom rested his hand on the fence and waited. Grace came close and stood beside him, her shoulder almost touching the wood. She breathed steady. Her ears were relaxed. This small moment felt bigger than many others. Tom opened the gate and stepped inside. He brought the saddle again that day. Light, clean, familiar. Grace noticed it, but did not step away. She stood still as Tom placed the saddle gently on her back. He did not tighten anything. He did not rush. He removed it after a short moment. Grace remained calm. Tom smiled, but he kept his feelings quiet. He knew excitement could change the air too fast. Over the next days, Tom added small steps. He fastened the saddle loosely. He walked Grace around the pasture with it on. He let her feel the weight without pressure. Grace moved carefully at first. Her steps were slow. Her body tense. But nothing bad followed. Each time she walked with the saddle, her fear softened. One afternoon, Tom led her to the round pen. The space was smaller and safer. The ground was smooth. The fence was high. Grace stopped at the gate and hesitated. Tom waited. After a moment, she stepped inside. Tom closed the gate and stood in the center. He held the lead rope lightly. He did not pull. He asked with his voice and posture. Grace walked. Then she stopped. Tom stopped too. They stood together in the quiet. Tom asked again, gentle and clear. Grace took a step. They moved like this for a long time. Step. Pause. Breath. Step. When Grace trotted for the first time with the saddle, it was awkward. She tossed her head and slowed quickly. Tom spoke calmly and brought her back to a walk. He did not push her. That evening, Tom sat on the fence and watched the sun fall. Grace grazed nearby. She stayed close. Closer than before. The next morning, Sam returned. He had heard about the storm and wanted to check in. Sam watched as Tom worked Grace in the round pen. She looks steady, Sam said. Tom nodded. He kept his eyes on Grace. Sam asked if Tom planned to ride her soon. Tom shook his head. Not yet, he said. Sam understood. He did not argue. A few days later, something changed. Tom was brushing Grace when a truck backfired on the road nearby. The sound was sharp and sudden. Grace jumped hard. She pulled away and ran toward the fence. Her eyes were wide. Her breath fast. Old fear rushed back like a wave. Tom stayed where he was. He did not chase her. He did not shout. He spoke her name calmly. Grace slowed, then stopped. She stood shaking, torn between running and staying. Tom waited. After a long moment, Grace turned and walked back toward him. Each step was unsure, but she kept going. When she reached him, Tom stood still. He did not touch her until she lowered her head. Then he placed one hand on her neck. Grace breathed out. This moment mattered more than all the calm days before. She had been scared, but she had come back. Trust was no longer only about peace. It was about return. That night, Tom slept lightly. He knew they were getting close to a turning point. He also knew the past did not disappear easily. The next week, Tom prepared for a bigger step. He saddled Grace and led her to the round pen. He checked everything twice. He spoke to her softly. Grace stood still. Tom placed his foot in the stirrup and leaned his weight slightly. He did not climb on. He waited. Grace shifted but did not move away. Tom stepped down. He repeated this again and again over the next days. Lean. Pause. Down. Grace learned the feeling. She learned nothing bad followed. One morning, Tom felt it was time. He saddled Grace and led her to the pen. The air was still. The sky clear. Tom leaned into the saddle and lifted himself just enough to rest his weight for a moment. He stayed low. He did not swing his leg over. Grace froze. Tom breathed slow. Grace breathed too. Tom stepped down. That was enough. Later that day, Tom sat alone near the barn. He thought about the label from the auction. Unfixable. He shook his head. Grace was not broken. She was careful. As the sun set, Grace stood beside him again. She lowered her head and rested it lightly against his shoulder. Tom closed his eyes. The hardest part was almost here. But they were no longer strangers facing it alone. They were partners learning the same language. The morning came clear and quiet. The ranch felt still, as if the land itself was waiting. Grace stood near the round pen, her coat shining in the early light. She watched Tom walk toward her, her ears calm and forward. This day felt different. Tom moved with care, but his heart was steady. He brushed Grace slowly, letting the rhythm settle them both. She stood without tension. Her breathing was smooth. When he placed the saddle on her back, she did not flinch. They walked to the round pen together. Tom checked the gate, the ground, the air. Everything felt right. He held the reins softly and spoke to Grace in the same voice he always used. Grace listened. Tom placed his foot in the stirrup and leaned his weight into the saddle. He paused and waited. Grace shifted slightly, then stood still. Tom lifted himself carefully and sat fully in the saddle for the first time. The world seemed to hold its breath. Grace froze. Her muscles tightened. Her ears flicked back and forward. Tom stayed calm. He sat light and still. He did not pull. He did not rush. Grace breathed out. Tom breathed with her. He stayed only a moment before sliding gently back to the ground. He loosened the reins and stepped away. Grace stood quietly. Tom smiled, not wide or loud, but deep. They did not stop there. Later that day, Tom mounted again. This time he stayed a little longer. He asked Grace to take one step forward. She hesitated. Tom waited. Grace took the step. Then, another. They moved slowly around the pen. Walk only. No pressure. No rush. Grace's steps were careful, but steady. She listened. She felt. She learned. When Tom dismounted, Grace turned and touched his arm with her nose. A small action. A strong sign. Over the next days, they repeated this work. Short rides. Calm walks. Many pauses. Grace grew stronger. Her fear no longer controlled her. It still whispered, but it did not rule. One afternoon, Sam returned again. He watched from the fence as Tom rode Grace in the pasture. The sky was wide and blue. Grace moved smoothly beneath Tom, her head relaxed, her steps even. Sam shook his head slowly. I would not have believed it, he said. Tom said nothing. He only rode on. Word began to spread. People who had seen Grace at the auction heard the story. Some came to see for themselves. They stood quietly by the fence and watched a horse once labeled Unfixable move with calm and trust. Grace did not perform. She simply lived. One day, Tom rode her beyond the pasture for the first time. The path led past trees and open land. Birds rose from the grass. Wind moved through the leaves. Grace startled once, then settled. She kept going. Tom guided her gently. He trusted her. She trusted him. They returned home without trouble. That evening, Tom sat outside as the sun set. Grace grazed nearby. She stayed close. Close enough to touch. Tom thought about the auction yard. The noise. The sign. The words that tried to define her. Unfixable. He stood and walked to Grace. He rested his hand on her neck. You were never broken, he said softly. Grace lifted her head and looked at him. Her eyes were calm and bright. The next weeks brought more rides, more paths, more moments of learning. Grace grew confident. She moved with ease. Her body was strong. Her mind clear. She was not perfect. She did not need to be. One morning, a young girl from a nearby ranch came with her father. She watched Grace with wide eyes. "She is beautiful," the girl said. Tom smiled. Grace stood still as the girl reached out and touched her shoulder. Grace did not pull away. Trust had grown roots. As summer deepened, Tom and Grace rode often at sunrise and sunset. They moved together across open land, quiet and steady. Grace carried Tom not because she was forced, but because she chose to. One evening, Tom rode her to the highest hill on the ranch. The land stretched wide below them. The sky burned gold and red. They stopped and stood there. Tom looked out at the horizon. Grace stood strong beneath him. In that moment, there was no past, no labels, no fear, only a horse and a man who had learned to listen. When they rode back down, Grace moved with confidence. Her steps sure, her heart open. The mare sold as Unfixable had become something else entirely. She had become a partner. And Tom knew this story was not about fixing at all. It was about seeing. And once seen, Grace had never been lost again.